Ask a dentist why a woman's smile looks different after 50, and most will give you the same two words. It's aging. That answer is incomplete. And the missing part hid in plain sight for years. In exam rooms, on x-rays, nobody flagged. In a pattern nobody had been trained to connect. Because somewhere between her late 40s and 60s, almost every woman notices it. Not one dramatic change. A dozen small ones, all arriving in the same narrow window. Lips a little thinner, less tooth showing in an ordinary smile, a mouth that just doesn't feel like it used to. She goes in for a checkup. The exam comes back clean, no decay, no disease, nothing on the chart to explain any of it. So if it isn't decay and aging doesn't actually explain why it happens in this window, on this timeline, what is it? Here's what almost nobody admits. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she'd started to wonder if she was imagining it, if it was vanity, if she was noticing something that simply wasn't there. She wasn't imagining it. The problem was never her perception. The problem is that the answer was never going to show up on a normal exam because nobody was checking for it. So tonight we start over, not with an explanation, with an investigation. 4 systems in the mouth appear to shift in this same window. A gland, a strip of tissue, the lips, and something inside bone that no mirror could ever show you. Before we say what's actually happening, it's worth asking what isn't, because the obvious answers, the ones that sound right on the surface, turn out to be wrong or badly incomplete. Figuring out why they're wrong is most of this investigation. It's the same kind of trail Dr. Adrian Kane follows across the whole body in The Science of Aging After 40. Plausible explanations that don't quite hold up, chased until they lead somewhere nobody expected. Keep that in mind. We're about to do the same thing here, one system at a time, starting with the one every woman already blames for the wrong reason. Start with the symptom every woman recognizes instantly: dryness. Somewhere between 30 and 50% of postmenopausal women report a mouth that doesn't feel wet enough, waking with a tongue stuck to the roof of the mouth, needing water to get through a sentence. The obvious explanation: dehydration. Drink more, problem solved. Researchers tested that directly, not asking how mouths felt, but physically measuring salivary flow. The deficit showed up regardless of how much water anyone was drinking. The glands themselves were simply producing less, which means the obvious answer was wrong. It was never the water, it was the gland. But that just trades one mystery for another. Why would an organ with one job, produce fluid, simply decide to do less of it in this exact decade of a woman's life? We're not answering that yet. Hold the question, because at almost the same time, a second system started failing, and it had nothing to do with water at all. The obvious next guess: gum disease. Brushing habits slip with age, gums recede, nothing unusual there. For a while, that was more or less the working theory. Then a systematic review, pooling 9 studies and more than 1,000 women, found something that shouldn't have happened if just aging were the whole story. Postmenopausal women showed deeper pockets around the teeth and more lost tissue than women of comparable age who hadn't gone through menopause yet. Comparable age, not younger versus older, the same age, different hormonal status. It got harder to dismiss from there. Researchers compared women who were the exact same age, some on hormone therapy, some not. The hormone group had less tissue loss, same birthdays, different biology, different outcome. Ordinary aging doesn't check anyone's hormone panel. Something else is choosing who this happens to, and it isn't the calendar. That explains one clue. It makes the next one stranger, because the next tissue to change isn't a gland, and it isn't gum tissue. It's something you'd assume is an entirely different category of aging: skin. If the pattern held, the lips should confirm it perfectly. Another hormone-dependent tissue failing on the same timeline. They don't, not cleanly. And this almost broke the whole theory. The lips do thin. The vermilion, the defined pink edge, visibly loses volume in the same window as menopause. Underneath it, a real mechanism, a mesh of collagen and elastin, the same proteins behind skin's elasticity, breaking down. But that exact mesh breaks down in every aging person. Hormones or not. The muscle circling the mouth thins with age in men too. So which is it? The same hormonal story as the gland and the gum, or an unrelated process that just happens to land on the same calendar? Here's the honest answer, and it's worth sitting with because it complicates this instead of completing it. The evidence here is moderate, not high. Researchers can't fully separate what menopause is doing from what time alone would have done regardless. It's very likely both, tangled together, and pretending otherwise would make this a worse investigation, not a better one. Which leaves an uncomfortable question hanging. If the clean pattern breaks down here, does it break down everywhere? Or is there a fourth system where the signal is so strong there's no ambiguity left at all? There is, and it isn't anywhere a mirror can show you. Every clue so far has been something you could, in theory, notice yourself. A feeling, a look in the mirror. This one isn't. It's happening inside bone, and none of it will ever show up in a reflection. Estrogen normally keeps a balance between two kinds of bone cells, the ones that build and the ones that break down. Remove estrogen, and the balance tips toward breakdown. The exact mechanism behind postmenopausal osteoporosis anywhere in the skeleton. Except here, it's happening specifically in the jaw. Studies measuring jawbone density directly have found thinner mandibular bone in postmenopausal women. Some estimates put alveolar bone loss, the ridge that physically holds teeth in place, at roughly 1 to 2% a year in this window. The same pace as bone loss happening anywhere else in the body, for the same underlying reason. That bone isn't a decoration. It's the scaffolding that holds teeth in position and shapes how the lip sits over them. When it shrinks, teeth can shift, gums recede further, and the entire architecture behind a smile quietly resets, invisibly, with nothing to flag it on a routine check. 4 systems now: a gland, a strip of tissue, a blurry half-hormonal mesh under the lips, and bone, disappearing somewhere no one thought to call part of the smile at all. On paper, these have nothing to do with each other, except they do. And the connection is the part almost nobody sees coming. 4 tissues, nothing alike on the surface: a fluid-producing gland, a strip of connective tissue, a mesh of skin protein, a piece of skeleton. Scientists went looking for one thing they might share anyway. Under a microscope, they found it in every single one: a receptor, a docking site for estrogen. If part of you already suspected that before we said it, you were ahead of where dental medicine was less than 15 years ago. Estrogen was never just a reproductive hormone that happened to occasionally brush against the mouth. In these 4 tissues, its actual job was maintenance. The entire time, telling glands to keep producing fluid, telling gum tissue to keep rebuilding collagen and calming inflammation, slowing the breakdown of the mesh under the lips, keeping bone-building cells in balance with the ones that break bone down. So that's what those 4 clues were pointing toward the whole time. Not 4 separate failures. One signal going quiet in 4 places that had been depending on it without anyone ever telling them so. And the mouth just happens to be one of the only places in your entire body where you can actually watch that signal disappear in a mirror every single morning without an X-ray or a blood test. Here's the part that reframes everything again. Once researchers recognized this pattern in the mouth, they found same receptors doing the same quiet maintenance work almost everywhere else. Skin across the entire body, bone throughout the skeleton, tissue linings that have nothing to do with teeth at all. If you've also noticed your skin somewhere else doesn't bounce back the way it used to, or that a joint feels different than it did 5 years ago, that's not an unrelated complaint. Same signal, different postcodes. The mouth was never a special case. It's just visible. It's one of the only chapters of this transition you happen to check every single morning without ever being told what you were actually looking at. The smile isn't the story. It's the messenger. That's the exact through line Dr. Adrian Kane follows across the whole body in The Science of Aging After 40. One hormonal signal surfacing in systems that look on paper completely unrelated. The mouth is simply the one chapter you can read for yourself without a specialist. But finding the mechanism only answers half of this. The real question left is the one that actually affects you. If estrogen is the cause, why doesn't simply restoring it fix everything? You'd expect the answer to be simple. Replace the hormone, restore the 4 systems. It isn't that simple, and the reason is worth knowing before spending money on any of this. Start with hormone therapy itself, because it's the most direct test of the theory. Several studies do link it to more saliva and, in some cases, less gum tissue loss, the exact outcome from that same age comparison earlier. That's real evidence the mechanism is right. But no major guideline recommends starting hormone therapy for oral symptoms alone, because it doesn't fully undo what's already happened, and its effects reach far beyond the mouth. Restoring the signal helps. It doesn't rewind the tape. So if hormones aren't the whole fix, what is? The tier with the strongest evidence isn't hormonal at all, it's mechanical. If gum tissue is fighting a slower repair cycle with weaker defenses, clearing the daily bacterial load matters more, not less. Brushing, flossing, regular dental visits, unglamorous, but still the single most effective lever anyone has, menopause or not. Fluoride compensates directly for a mouth doing less of its own rinsing. Quitting smoking and controlling blood sugar belong here too, because both measurably worsen every mechanism we just traced. One tier down, things that ease the symptom without touching the mechanism. Hydration and saliva substitutes don't restore the gland's signaling. So why do they help at all? because they replace what the gland isn't producing from the outside. That's relief, not repair. And the difference is worth knowing. Calcium, vitamin D, and protein support bone broadly, even without menopause-specific trials proving it directly. Which raises the same question about the most visible category of all. If a filler can restore lip volume in a single afternoon, why doesn't the underlying biology follow along? Because a filler adds material. It doesn't restore collagen production in the fibroblasts underneath, so the mesh keeps thinning at the same rate it always was, just with something added on top of it now. Veneers and cosmetic restorations work the same way. Real, immediate, worth it for a lot of women, but they're treating the result, not the cause. One honest note before we move on. If dryness, bleeding, or discomfort is severe, sudden, or doesn't fit this pattern, that's not something to self-diagnose from a video. A handful of medications and a few unrelated conditions can look identical from the outside. A professional can tell the difference in a single visit. Which brings us back to the exam room none of this ever showed up in. Its aging wasn't a lie exactly. It was a placeholder. The answer people reached for before anyone had a better one. She wasn't vain, and she wasn't imagining anything. She was noticing something real, years before most of the field had language for it. That matters more than it sounds like it should. A smile carries more information than almost any other part of a face. It's how people read warmth, how you recognize yourself in old photographs in a mirror in the half second before you decide whether to smile at all. When it changes quietly without asking, it can feel like the body making a decision without you. It wasn't a decision, it was biology. A specific hormone doing a specific job in 4 specific places on a timeline that finally makes sense. Some of it you can influence. Some of it you can't. Knowing which is worth more than wondering ever was. Understanding this doesn't undo 40 years of biology, but it changes what happens next. And for the first time, that part is actually yours to decide. The mirror from the opening. Soft, warm light. A genuine smile. So the next time you catch it in the mirror, you won't just see a smile that looks a little different. You'll see biology, mid-sentence. Here's what I actually want to know. When did you first notice yours had changed? In the mirror, in a photo next to an old one, or something you felt before you ever saw it? Tell me in the comments. Whatever the answer is, you were never the only one.